it's definitely been difficult. And I think, like you said, funds have definitely dried up, but I think there is still a lot of interest in sports tech. And I think investors are really starting to get more involved in sports tech just with, I think the rise of valuations in sports teams, the rise of, just viewership in sports, things like that is really kind of broadening the industry and creating such a larger market in general. So I think it's an exciting time in sports tech right now. And I think investors are really kind of seeing that and really showing that with capital that they're putting into funds.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sports Tech All Stars podcast. We are on the cusp of releasing our latest Sports Tech Venture Capital report. You might already be reading it might have already read it by the time you see or hear this episode. Yeah, it's been a fun year for the investment space in sports tech. Not if you're a founder in sports tech. Actually, it's probably not been very fun for you. Investment numbers have been at a low since we've been tracking this data. As of 2014, I believe, is the first year that we were really looking at it. But that does not mean that there is no money. We've actually seen M&A activity at an all-time high over that same period. So it's not that there is no capital for investment. It's just been funneling around and swirling around in different ways. Founders have capital or will find it. More importantly, and I wrote an article about this recently, that it's not just that there is kind of this flowing around of capital. There is so much more new money and new investors who've entered into this space. Sports tech is an attractive proposition, it would seem, and a lot of that capital is just waiting to be deployed. On today's episode, we're going to be talking to one of those new funds who have entered the market. I've got Cici Bellis, the founder and general partner at Cartan Capital, on the show today. Welcome to the episode, Cici.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ron. Excited to chat.
Cici, I feel like the founder general partner thing does you no justice whatsoever, because Cici, by the way, is also a former world number 35 on the WTA tour. Let me pull out my notes. What do I have here, Cici? You've done a fair bit. All right. A WTA challenger winner, 6 ITF tournaments, third round exits at pretty much at the Aussie Open, at the French Open, and the US Open. I mean, we're talking to a serious pro athlete here, Cici.
Yeah, I had a really good time playing, and I get to still be involved in tennis and sports tech with what I'm doing now. So kind of best of both worlds for sure.
Sounds like a good place to be. I want to talk to you a little bit more about tennis and tennis tech. I actually just recently did a series I think it's called the Tennis Innovation Conference, it's a TIC, and we were talking about the future of tennis. So I want to talk specifically from your perspective about the growth of tennis. But before we get there, walk me through your journey of setting up Cartan Capital. What's the story of the fund? And why, I guess, for you, is that the way to go from a pro athlete to now an investor?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I played on tour tennis professionally for about 4 or 5 years, and kind of at the tail end of my undergrad degree, which I was completing online while I was playing full time. I had been injured for quite a while in tennis, kind of the same reoccurring injury, and just felt like it was time to move on. And lucky enough for me, a mile down the road from where I was training was another sports tech focused fund, and I was lucky enough to jump on board with them and absolutely loved it. Kind of merging my background and my interest, which was really exciting. And I grew up in the Bay Area in California, so I was, felt like surrounded by VC from, a very young age, and it always was something that interests me. So it really just felt like the best path for me going forward. And I was at the fund for about 3, almost 4 years, and the long term goal for me was always to start my own. So I decided to go out and do that earlier this year. I feel like the next few years of VC is going to be kind of, vintage returns. And I think the next few years are going to be just a really exciting time to be investing in VC, and especially in sports and health tech VC, which we're focused on. So that's kind of the story of how the fund came about. It was really kind of a long term goal for me for a while. And we're really excited about kind of getting going. We actually just made our first investment. We'll be announcing it in a couple of weeks, which we're really excited about. So, yeah, we finally got off the ground, so to say.
Smashing those aces out already. All right, a couple of follow-ups. Yeah, I'm going to hear a lot of bad tennis puns from ECC. I'm sorry, but I can't help myself. All right, so indulge
Love
me
it.
a bit. But a couple of follow-ups to the origin story. So, did you already kind of feel in your playing career that this was the direction that you wanted to head in, or Was that just because of the environment, as you said, like you joined? Was it? It's Lake Nona, right? Leeds Sport Health Tech at Lake Nona was the one that you were working with. So was it after you joined them, they were like, hey, actually, this is a really cool world, and I want to really get into it here?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think my interest in VC really started when I was growing up in California, and I committed to play tennis at Stanford. And I knew that, when I, either post college or post professional career, VC is the, kind of long term career I wanted to be involved in. So it really stemmed from a young age, and with my tennis career kind of ending short. Or at least a little bit sooner than I expected, of course, in jumping on board at Lead Sports. It was kind of the perfect, I think, path for me and, the way to build a long term career.
Got it. Makes sense. And the main reason I asked that question was because we've seen this trend of like the athlete investor, right? And we've seen a
Yeah.
lot of funds which are either promoted by athletes or athletes are joining on, maybe just for the marketing and visibility. But for whatever it is, athletes in whichever sport are increasingly active in the sports tech space. Um, Makes a lot of sense. A lot of synergies there for what they bring to the table. But I guess for you, it was more the West Coast Valley perspective that you grew up in, which made it easy for you to jump into the fund. All right, cool. So we've covered a bit of the origin stuff. Let's talk about the fund. I do want to cover your tennis career. I don't want to blow past that at all. I love talking to professional athletes. Nowhere close to being one in my lifetime. So I have tremendous admiration for anybody who's achieved that. And we've had a few guests on this podcast recently, so I've had the good fortune of speaking with them. We'll come that bit towards the end. But let's focus on the fund right now. So walk me through it. What is your investment thesis? What stage of startups are you looking at? Maybe you can use the first deal that you've already executed as an example. What sectors within sports tech are you looking? Sports and health you mentioned already. Yeah, just walk me through what is your average typical deal look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a whole, it's a 10 million fund focused on sports tech and health tech. So, on the sports side of things, we'll really look at anything that touches sports that has a tech element. So, anything involving sports performance, AI in sports, fan engagement solutions, things like that. We love to look at anything in that space. And then on the health side of things, anything we like to say on the non-technical side of health. So, we won't look at anything in biotech, pharmaceuticals, anything that really requires clinical trials. Just feel like it's slightly outside of our area of expertise. So we like to look at non-technical health. So that's, wellness, fitness, wearable technology, nutrition, femtech, things like that are really kind of in our bread and butter. So those are kind of the sectors that we like to look at. And I have an advisory board, an awesome advisory board that has backgrounds in a lot of those areas. So we feel like we have pretty deep expertise in most of those areas that I mentioned, which is super exciting. And then on the stage side of things, we're looking at pre-seed through Series A. I'd say mainly seed and early stage Series A. We love to look at companies that have already gone to market, have a little bit of traction, be able to rely on a bit of feedback. That's an important part of our diligence. So I would say mainly seed and Series A companies, and then writing initial check sizes, kind of giving the range from around a quarter million to a million. But I think across the lifetime of the fund, it'll be kind of a quarter million and putting in a half a million into some of our favorites, potentially following on to some earlier investments as well. So I guess that's kind of our thesis. I don't know if I covered everything that you mentioned there.
No, fair. Yeah, I think on the sectors, yeah, most sports tech funds are open. It's you mentioned specifically in health, but I'd also assume you're open to media and entertainment. Are you going to touch gaming at all, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'll
Yeah.
fall under our sports tech kind of thesis as well. Definitely media, fan engagement, in stadium solutions, sports betting we'll look at. So really anything that has applications in sports.
And and it's one of those where when I talk to investors, it's like, yeah, we look at everything. But there's a reason that investors, I think, are looking at everything, us included, up for our own fund or even just generally the deal flow I look at, is because sports tech is actually growing equally equally, some are faster than the others, but it is growing in across a bunch of areas. So for a founder that's listening to it, it's not like, hey, that's just the typical stuff. No, it's the typical stuff you all investors are open to because there are opportunities everywhere. So that's just one thing to put out there. Lastly, on in terms of leading or following, like do you like to be a bit more aggressive? For example, the deal that you've done, are you participating or do you lead that round?
We're following on that round. I think, for the first half of our fund, we'll be mainly following on, and then kind of once we get our feet, kind of under us, then we'll be able to lead a few rounds, mainly at the end of the kind of deployment period, I would say.
Makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to talk about the deal at all that you're doing, or is that too early still?
A little early. We'll be ready to talk about it, I think, in a couple weeks, and then happy to share some more information for sure.
Perfect. If you want to know more, and we'll do the plugs later as well, but like Cici puts out a really cool, really good newsletter. I think there've been 2 or 3 editions. I've been tracking some of the stuff that you did. I think you did one on wearables. Was that edition one?
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think last week I forget what it was, but yeah, there's a newsletter out there in which I'm guessing this news will be covered. So you can follow them on cartancapital.com. That's CARTAN hyphen capital.com. All right, so that is covering a bit of the investment thesis. Um, I want to talk about your journey about setting up the fund because I think the period that we're in, it really feels like I said, like the capital has dried up in terms of liquidity available in the market. What was your experience with raising the fund to get to the stage that you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely been kind of an enlightening period for me. First time fundraising, so a bit of a learning curve along the way, and our fund structure is pretty flexible. So it's been a bit of an easier road so far, I would say. We have about 40% of the fund committed now. We'll continue fundraising
Right.
probably through summer of next year. But yeah, we have a very collaborative fund structure in the way we work with LPs. So I'd say they have a bit more maybe comfort coming on board with a first time fund manager and myself. So it's definitely been difficult. And I think, like you said, funds have definitely dried up, but I think there is still a lot of interest in sports tech. And I
Yeah.
think investors are really starting to get more involved in sports tech just with I think the rise of valuations in sports teams, the rise of, just viewership in sports, things like that is really kind of broadening the industry and creating such a larger market in general. So I think it's an exciting time in sports tech right now. And I think investors are really kind of seeing that and really showing that with capital that they're putting into funds.
Yeah, it's no accident that, I mean, I've been beating this drum for a while, but it's no accident that big tech themselves are looking at sports more seriously. I just read an article today that I think YouTube will also bid for NBA games. Everybody wants to broadcast everything, whether it's Amazon, Apple, whether it's soccer, American football, the NBA, European football. Everybody wants in, and that pie just keeps growing and growing, and we'll see where that goes. So it's no question that there are more investors looking at it, looking at the space more with more interest. But as a fund for you, is that a challenge? Is this more competition? Is that, or is it just the everybody coming in makes the pie bigger, or do you feel that that maybe pressure a bit as a first time fundraiser?
Yeah, it's a great question. I honestly think of it as such a positive. I have so many good relationships involving sports tech investing, and I really feel it's a great community of investors that really want to see the growth of the industry and want to work together on really interesting deals. So we've already participated. The first deal that we did, it was a follow on to a lead investor that we have a great relationship with. So I really think it's a good community of investors that all really want to see the growth of the industry. So I don't feel like it's going to hurt us too much. I actually think of it as a positive to be able to be a part of a growing industry, which is really what the goal is of VC is to be a part of kind of earlier stage growing industries. So exciting times.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's too early to be competitive. I think
Hmm.
this is the point where everybody has to be, and they are, which is the great thing about working in the industry right now. Everybody is more collaborative, sharing information, sharing deal flow, sharing perspectives. So good startups, it's will come up on multiple people's radars, and obviously, as everybody knows, investors talk, and investors talk in quite a lot of detail very often as well, even if they're not participating in a round. So that perspective is useful to share. Let's talk about, I mean, I know we described a lot of sectors that are really interesting to you, from media, entertainment, and fitness, health, everything. But if I had to put you on the spot and give me 2 or 3 specific topics that you're really looking at keenly, where let's say you're passively open to everything, of course,
Hmm.
but maybe there is a couple of things that you're actively pursuing a bit more.
Yeah,
What are those for you?
absolutely. Yeah, so we're really interested in wearable technology. I think the growth of this industry is going to be massive over, the next 10 years, moving from kind of general fitness trackers. I'm wearing a Whoop right now, but also moving into kind of the health side of things. So being able to hit multiple different buckets that we're looking at. I think consumers in general want more data points from their workouts, from, their sleep, from just their overall health. And I think that's just going to continue growing. It's an industry that we're really excited about and definitely looking at. Another one, I think, kind of fan
Sorry,
engagement.
before you move on there, just to stay on
Yeah.
wearables for a second, because it's something that we talk a lot about. Like, I mean, whatever device you're using, Whoop is one of those that gives you a ton of data, which can be for somebody, for some, and has proven to be like a bit of an overload as well. Like, hey, that maybe it might be a bit too much, but for others, it's fantastic. So, but basically, Whoop is giving you sleep, recovery, anything related to do with your heart, with whatever it can gather. It almost feels like the wearables market is maturing, right?
Mhm.
So there's like, I don't know, where do you think is the upside? Are there any specific data points? For example, there's one company that we've been looking at recently which is doing lactate threshold in muscles, so like muscle fatigue and stuff, through just wearing the first layer, your base layer, right? Sensors within that, like that kind of stuff looks interesting, and that's new.
Yeah.
So are there any metrics within this quantified athlete persona that we've built where it's a strong one and that's an athlete that's paying a lot as well? Are there any specific touch points or data points that you're interested in, CGM or I don't know, whatever it might
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I think, the CGM industry has been growing for quite a while, especially
be?
kind
Sorry,
of.
continuous glucose monitoring for anybody who doesn't follow that.
Yeah. Yeah, apologies. And especially during COVID, that we saw that a huge boost there. I think, we've been looking at a company in the sweat wearable space, so monitoring
Mhm.
hydration. I think that's a really interesting one. And I think wearables in general, the way the market's going to grow is the fact that they'll be applicable to health monitoring as well. So overall health monitoring, whether it's heart, lungs, things like that, and like an all-encompassing type of wearable that's not just focused on fitness tracking or sleep tracking, things like that. I think moving into the health side, it's a much larger market, being able to um, potentially be a prescription for some
Right.
different health conditions. And
It's
that's
the
that's
insurance thing, right? That's the segment you want to tap into,
yeah,
where it
exactly.
gets
That's what
insurer
we're
covered.
excited about. Totally. So yeah, that's one of the sectors we're excited about. Another one, I think, fan engagement technology. So that could, range from anything from viewership experiences at home, could be in stadium experiences, could be better, just better ways to, engage and monetize fans from like a sports team, a sports league perspective. We're looking at a couple companies in that space as well. I don't know if you wanted me to dive deeper into that or move on to the
Yeah,
next.
no, actually, yeah, perfect. Thank you for giving me that pause because I do want to dive deeper in that one. They usually the first thing that people want to talk about when it comes to fan experience, or at least has been the trend in 21, 22, maybe not so much in 23, was Web3, right?
Mhm.
Anything which is NFTs has become a bad word, but that underlying technology is still relevant, might be used for ticketing, smart contracts, whatever else. So there's one fan experience use case which is Web3 based. There might be another which is mixed reality based, which is your XR, put on a headset or just through your phone, augmented reality, whatever. Are any of those of particular interest to you guys, or as you said, it can be anything at home in stadium. It's much bit broader.
Yeah, AR, VR, MR, super interesting to us. I am familiar with a few companies in the space, like in stadium technology that uses augmented reality. It's super, super interesting. And I think just being able to engage younger fans, Gen Z fans more with the technology that, they have in their hands at all times, I think is going to be the path forward for that industry for sure.
Makes sense. All right, cool. So we got through with number two. Let's go to number three. You had one
Yeah,
more.
third one I would say is probably ticketing.
Okay.
I guess kind of in the somewhat of the fan engagement vertical as well, but I think the ticketing space is super ripe for disruption. We're seeing a ton of companies in that space that are trying to, some are trying to compete with the large, the SeatGeeks, the Ticketmasters, but I think also the companies that are going to be able to be kind of grandfathered in by those larger players are going to be the ones that end up succeeding, and whether it's having tech that overlays onto those larger players, or partnering with those and being able to have the bigger players pull them up, things like that. I think that's a really interesting space for us. We're seeing a few companies already kind of in that area, and definitely looking deeper on that side of things as well.
I had the founder of Dibs on the podcast a while ago, and one of the things that he brought up, which I thought was super relevant to talk about, is that the big players, the ticket masters and such of the world, really act as gatekeepers for this industry. This industry is, yeah, you want to say Web3 based or blockchain based ticketing is a no brainer. It gives you so much authentication value, blah blah blah, easy exchange, all that kind of stuff. But if they don't want it, if SeatGeek and Ticketmaster and all of them don't want it, it doesn't get in, right? And it's very much how you can work with these guys to get your technology through the door, and then really bring innovation to a wider audience. That was his opinion. Has that been your
Yeah.
experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, complete same page. I think, like you said, they are the gatekeepers of the industry, and it is a very kind of like gated, and like kind of a
A bit of a
mysterious.
cartel, no? We can use that word. Like it sounds like it. Like these guys run the show because
Yeah.
they own all the contracts. They own all work with all the rights holders, and the rights holders don't want to say no to them. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know I completely agree there, and it's an interesting space because I think there is so much room for growth outside of those large players, and I think in the next 10 years we'll see a totally different ticketing kind of landscape.
You'd hope so, right? You'd hope so. I mean, I my own small experience, and this is retarded, but so every Christmas I usually go to near Manchester, which is where my daughter's grandparents live. So Christmas is with her grandparents in Macclesfield, and I don't celebrate Christmas, so I just go, and I will usually try to catch the Boxing Day game, United, which is my team, and just the process to get that ticket and either get it. I have a season holder friend who will either get me his, or he'll have to look amongst his friends, or I'll be searching on some very dubious websites to really know. Like I was like, it cannot be in 2023 that it's such a challenge because I know that there are tickets for that game. I'm 100% sure, but just there has to be a better way to do this. And it really feels, and I know that there are, because we track the market, that there are a ton of good solutions out there, but I can't use them. And this cartel, this control needs to be broken, I feel.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree. I think that's a great perspective. Definitely the way we're seeing it as well. So yeah, I think those are kind of the three exciting verticals that we're looking into. Of course, a couple areas in health, but yeah, on the sports side of things, those are our favorites right now.
Okay, I want you to take off your investor hat and put on your player tennis cap. What would have been a piece of tech that you see now or see the potential of right now that would have helped you, you think, when you were playing? That would have been, hey, if I had access to that, either something that doesn't exist or maybe something that you're seeing already.
Yeah, I mean, I think, from an athlete's perspective, I have certain biases towards companies that I feel like I would have used, and wearable companies like the one I mentioned in the hydration tracking space is something I would have loved when I was playing, and something I definitely would have used. I think, at the training center that I was at, as our national training center, all of the players would have wanted to use something like that to be able to track that. It's very common in tennis to experience, heat stroke, cramping, things like that, because we play in very hot conditions a lot of the
Right.
year. So I think having something like that to be able to understand when you're really dehydrated and when your kind of ability and like level of play will start going down would be really interesting to be able to track and kind of not allow to happen, and be able to kind of be ahead of the game there. So would have loved something like that. And then yeah, anything involving kind of sports performance and like AI applications in the way that my style of play, against another player, things like that, I think would be super interesting. We're seeing a couple of different players in that space, in the kind of tennis analytics space right now. But I think sports in general, I think anything involving sports performance that can just enhance an athlete's performance, give them more data points, more information about competitors, would be super interesting for sure.
I remember reading an article, and this is going back a few years. It's probably the mid 2010s, so 15, 16, something like that, when uh, the GOAT. Federer was kind of making that resurgent, that comeback to win his last couple of slams after he hadn't won for a while. And the story, confirm it or not, I don't know, but the article I read from a credible source was that he got in touch with the specific analytics company, and that's how he developed a couple of techniques, like his saber return
Yeah.
came as a part of that, and just he got a lot better with understanding the analytics side of things, and that's what got him. I think it was the 2017 Australian Open that he beat Nadal in, and then he had a win against Djokovic again at Wimbledon. Like that, those last couple of slams after a gap came through this. Now it's more ubiquitous, I would imagine, on the tour. Like the
Yeah.
ATP, of course, launched right their Player IQ tool. That's the kind of thing that you think you would have found super useful when you were playing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anything that is really tech enabling sports, whether it's, on the data analytics side from matches or training, or even kind of on the recovery side of things, being able to analyze your recovery better, figure out what you should do based on how recovered you are, or if you're rehabbing from an injury, like being able to kind of quantify metrics on how well you're, healing, rehabbing, recovering. Really, really interesting spaces for sure.
But keeping that player tennis cap on, is there a point for you that is there a thing as too much data? Is how do you draw that line that you don't get bogged down by the numbers? Maybe, I guess you can speak only for yourself because everybody is different, I'd imagine, right, in how they
Yeah.
interact with data. But what was your experience, and what was the experience of people you played around, other girls on the tour and stuff?
Yeah, I think there is a point where too much data is a thing, and I think you can feel when it gets to that point when you maybe have a report, an analytics report, and there's like a million entries of things that are maybe useless or that you wouldn't really look towards. And so I think keeping it very refined and like an efficient data source that only kind of gives you the outputs that you really want to see is something that I really liked and something I used for sure while I was playing. And I think other players on tour use similar analytics solutions. I know exactly the one you're talking about with Federer, and I've spoken to them many times and I've used them while I was playing. So
Right.
I think, having solutions that give you only the data points that you feel would be relevant and helpful, and not any like white noise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think like like a specific example of, hey, when it's the second serve when the deuce scored, don't return to the backhand. Like some just
Yeah.
that one thing, and
Mhm.
that's the one thing that's easy to remember. I think I've had a professional coach, legendary Indian cricket coach. Well, he's South African, but he won the World Cup with India. Who was talking about the same thing on the spot, and he was like that role of translation between data to athlete or coach, like how do you get reams of data into one actionable, easy, piece of information rather than data point, just a piece of information that you can easily just draw out on a football field or on a tennis court or whatever. Say, hey, just do this, and that'll help you.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
becomes
And
important.
I know I couldn't agree more. And I think, there are solutions now that can really tell players, on a big point, your opponent is most likely to serve in this
Right.
spot, be ready, like cover this area, things like that. But I think even going a step further and, understanding from like a person's footwork patterns, or like the toss on their serve, if it's like slightly to the left, maybe they're going to go out wide on the ad side rather than go T, on big points, things like that. I think that would be even more helpful to be able to make more informed decisions, rather than like, oh, in the past they have gone to this area on their serve on break points, not necessarily in this match, but in their previous matches or previous tournaments, rather than like what's going to happen right now in this
Right.
match on this point. What can I do to be able to better, um, you know, predict where they're going to go or how they're going to play the point, things like that.
Context matters. Context
Yeah.
is the most important thing, right? Like just data on its own is of no value. Like you have to understand, like, hey, when they're playing a player like me with maybe my build or my profile of just play, whatever it is. So that's super important.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Let's take a step back. So I've had you from investor to player, now just taking a step back into looking at tennis tech overall. We've seen a couple of, I mean, let's say there's been the first wave of like the play sites of the world, which were doing automated line calling, do clips and highlights, and there are a few companies like that. More recently, we've had a company like Swing Vision, which It's not super recent. They've been around a while, but they just did a nice second round. I've had Swapnil on the pod as well, and they just use something, take all that big camera equipment and just make it your iPhone, right? And
Mm,
make it super easy for you to do all that stuff just from your device. It seems to me like or a company like Wingfield, right, which is again doing that same thing but with a different in a different format. It seems to me that all the action is just focused on this, like what is like line calling, specific player data about the match, like analytics about the game. Is there anything else beyond this? Like what else innovation do you want to see in tennis? So where is tennis really headed? Apart from just, hey, there's a camera which is capturing a lot of data and able to tell you all the data points that we discussed, or call your lines and then you move on. What else? What else
yeah.
do you want to see?
No, that's a great question. And I think, tennis has progressed like technologically in the last, 5 or 10 years. I've used both play sight, swing vision. I've used all of them under the roof when I was a player, and being able to analyze them from a VC perspective now is a wild experience, as I'm sure you can imagine. But
Right.
and a great form of diligence for sure. But yeah, I think having solutions that can maybe show where athletes are maybe weaker in some areas, stronger in some areas. Analyze their strokes and say, hey, like this is an area where you could be vulnerable for injury, or um, this is maybe different percentages of how effective your forehand is, or things like that. You know, for an athlete in a match to know, on a big point, if I'm on the run and going to go for a forehand down the line winner, what are my real chances of being able to hit that and make it and win the point off of that? I think that's taking like one step further of data and analytics, and kind of from an athlete's perspective, understanding what are my real chances of winning this point, doing this shot based on my opponent and what their strengths are, things like that. Going kind of a step further, I think is kind of the future of tennis analytics. And then yeah,
Anything
also
for that competitive edge.
exactly. Yeah, just going kind of one step further on the competitive edge. And then, I think from like a VC perspective, having tennis solutions be applicable in all sports is very interesting for me. And just kind of gaining that larger market opportunity is really what is going to make those kind of initial tennis solutions scale, and be kind of more of a VC case, and what we would look at. But I think, coming from an athlete's perspective, I'd want a solution that not just tennis players are using in fitness. I'd want solutions that other athletes find helpful, in other sports that are, don't have anything to do with tennis. And, I think having that and having the ability to move into other areas is really interesting.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about larger market solutions, because there is a school of thought or an argument that could be made that tennis is under threat from two of the fastest growing sports in the world, which is paddle and pickleball. Very curiously and interestingly, in completely different geographies, the Americans will always do their version of what they want to do, and pickleball will only grow there, and paddle is growing primarily through Europe, and we'll see what takes over the rest of the world. Um, but that brings up back to, because what's happening is a lot of tennis courts are being refurbished or repurposed rather, to accommodate these additional sports. What do you think that there is any threat to the game of tennis overall? Do we need more solutions? I think it came out of the lead accelerator like Break the Love, or I know there's a tennis simulator facility that's been talked about in New York, like things which are bringing more people to the game of tennis. Do you think that's a thing that tennis needs to seriously consider?
I don't think there's any threat whatsoever, for tennis from like a pickleball or paddle. I think if anything, it will kind of grow the viewership of racket sports in general. I think there are ways that tennis can be more like viewer and fan friendly for sure. In regards to, is it matches being too long? Is it seasons being too long? The tennis season is from January through now,
Right.
and players get about a month off, and
Yeah, the
that's it.
ATP Masters just got done, right? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of players are getting injured because of that, and I think viewership rates decline, because there's a tournament you can watch on TV every week. Why would they want to watch one right now when they can watch one next week? So I think there are certain things that I think can be definitely improved, involving the growth of tennis, but I don't think pickleball or paddle will ever get to kind of the global popularity of being able to watch tennis. I think it's a both of them are awesome, kind of like social sports. that you play like with your family, friends. And I know there are like professional tours now, and there are great athletes playing. But I think you'll never look at a professional pickleball or paddle player and look at them in the same aspect of like a Roger Federer or a Rafa Nadal or Novak Djokovic. It's a different level and of athlete, in my opinion.
Well, not yet. Certainly, maybe give it 20 years until you see that kind
Maybe.
of athlete emerge. But yeah, I take your point. I think tennis is still held as that is the gold standard of racket sports. No disrespect to any of the others, because again, of its history, of its legacy, which will never go away. Like nobody's taking that away. So fair. Similar point of view. So I had Marker Reed from Tennis Australia, and I don't mean to be name dropping, but I think that shared perspective is important. Marker Reed is the head of Wildcard Ventures. Who are Tennis Australia's fund, and he had a similar thing. I asked him a similar question about how do you feel about pickleball and paddle, and his thing was, yeah, listen, if it grows a sport, if it grows racket sports, if it brings cross players, people are cross pollinating across formats, maybe it helps tennis innovate, it forces tennis to innovate, which I really liked about
Yeah.
his answer that, hey, we have to kind of wake up and we can't be resting on our laurels. And hopefully that grows the sport overall. All right, cool, Cici. I think we've done a fair bit. We covered a bit of investor stuff, some athlete stuff, some tennis innovation stuff. Yeah, it's just a sport. I've never played it apart from recreationally here and there,
Mhm.
but been a fan throughout, and it's a sport I love. And curious to see more innovation in the space, as I'm sure you
Absolutely.
are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even in regards to pickle and paddle, I'm a huge pickleball fan. Like I
I was
love
going to
playing.
ask, do you have a preference between the two?
Well, I've actually never played paddle, funny enough. I
Okay.
love playing pickleball though. I think it's the most fun, kind of thing to do with your family and friends. I love it. Honestly, I play a couple times a week. And still play tennis
I've
a
heard
lot
it's.
too.
I've never played pick. So I'm in Europe, right? So I played a bit of
Yeah.
paddle and never
Yeah.
played pickleball, but I've heard it's like really addictive.
It's really addictive.
Pickleball,
It is really fun. And it's what's great about pickle in comparison to tennis is any age, any level
right?
can play with any age and any level, and it can be a great time and you can have a blast. Whereas in tennis, like it would not be as fun for someone at a high level to play with someone at a low level. In pickleball, it really evens the playing field quite a bit. So I think that's what makes it so social and so fun, and that's why I think it's growing so much. I love it.
Though I will present my hot take because of that, and you can. I would actually curious to hear your
Yeah.
perspective on it, which is that for that exact reason, I think pickleball will grow as a participative sport, but I don't think it's really a sport that you want to watch.
Yeah.
Like I've watched it on TV, and you watch like it's not really exciting. Like it's,
No.
I mean, yeah, there's a bit of tricks and flicks and stuff, but if all the points look the same,
Yeah.
and that's like the only thing that's happening, then do I really want to invest in, I don't know, an hour and a half of my day to watch that, no matter
Right.
what the stakes? I'm not convinced. Versus a bigger sport like tennis is incredibly dynamic. There's so much going on beyond the personalities of the players and all that. So that's my hot take. I think paddle is more in between those two. I think pickle is. I can imagine its popularity and super participatively growing, but for it to a sport really to take on, it needs stars. It needs
Yeah.
those pro athletes to really make a name and shine. And I think that might be a challenge for that sport. So that's my hot take. I don't know.
I
What do you
completely
think?
agree. No,
Okay.
I completely agree. I couldn't agree
Maybe
more.
not so hot then.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's a pretty normal take
Right.
and take that I've heard quite often. I think you look at the athletes, the professional athletes in tennis. You're never going to need to be that good of an athlete to play pickleball. It's never going to be the same level of athlete and athleticism and like work and time and preparation and training that needs to go into tennis. You're never going to need to do that for pickleball. So I think it's just it's different and it's hard to compare the two. And I think people are comparing them a lot. And it's not really fair for either to be compared
Right.
to the other because it's so different. And both are incredible. And I love both. I just don't think there's ever really going to be a way to compare the two.
Okay, so moving from my at best tepid take onto the future, shall we say? Let's talk about let's bring it home to Cartan Capital. What does the next 12, 18, 24 months look like for you guys?
Yeah, so we'll try and have the fund closed by spring, summer of next year, and then continue deploying for the next couple of years. Looking to create a generational firm, so we'll start planning for fund two maybe in about a year or so, which will be really exciting.
Oh wow!
But
So
yeah,
that means you'll be finishing Fund One pretty quick then.
No, we won't be finishing Fund One for at least 2.5 years, I would
Okay.
say.
That's still fairly
But
quick in a fund's life cycle, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a pretty small fund, so we'll be able to deploy, I would say, in like 2.5, 3 years total. And then move on from that. But I think we're, move on meaning start focusing on the next fund after that. But yeah, we're focused on raising and deploying for next year and continue to deploy for a couple years after that. So we're excited about the sports tech space and the health tech space, and yeah, just really excited about the quality of deal flow that's coming through right now. So we'll be very active investors over the next few years.
I would be remiss to ask if I didn't, because I mentioned this right at the start of the recording that we've seen capital dried up in this market, even though there are funds such as yourself deploying, and hopefully more will continue to do so. What does your perspective look like if you're talking to a startup founder who's had a tough time over the last, let's say, 12 months or so? They've been struggling to do their A round. They've been trying to scrabble, get to a bridge somehow. What do you think will the next wave of deployment really happen in 24? Do you have to wait longer? Do you have a perspective on that?
That's a good question. I think from what I've been hearing with other people in the industry as well, other investors, is that 24 will be, an incredible year for venture capital investing. Whether that means there's a lot of money going into startups, I don't know. From a return perspective, I think it'll be an incredible year to invest. I think it might be another year before we see numbers, like prior to 20 and 21 for sure. I think it'll be a few years, if not more, before that. But I think it'll be a great year overall to deploy. So we're very excited about it. I think from a startup perspective, continuing to push through and be scrappy in this time is really important. And knowing that the markets will balance out and reset. And we're in that reset period right now. So
Yeah, and especially valuations, right? Because that's the main thing that needs a bit of reset for founders is
yeah,
who are holding on to equity for dear life. Yeah, I think that's the one that you have to maybe ease off on a bit, because yeah, investors are looking for the best deal to make the best return. But it's not like they're saying, hey, if you give me 0.75x of your revenue or something, it's still a decent multiple. Might
yeah.
be 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not 10 and it's not 20 as it has been in those incredible peak years. Some of the deals that you see, like, whoa, man, I don't know how they pull that off. So, I mean, these investors are still taking a punt. It's just about whether you're going to give them that potential upside to exit your company at some point. And in the meantime, exactly as Cici said, you know, the that ability to scrap through and survive will really hold you good in long term. Um, all right, Cici, fantastic. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time, putting all those different hats on that I made you use interchangeably, which you smashed my serves back in my court very easily. I was a horrible. I'm doing so badly with this. But my last question, which is the one that I always like to end on. I like to believe there were sports fans first. So, to you, what has been your favorite sporting moment? And for you, I'm going to ask it in two parts. One from your career, so as an athlete, and one just purely as a fan.
Oh my gosh. From an athlete's perspective, such a hard question. I think anytime playing in our home slam at the US Open is an incredible experience. Definitely some of my favorite memories in tennis there as an athlete. And then from a fan's perspective, I'm a huge fan of Bay Area sports teams, the Warriors, the 49ers. I think any Warriors championship in the last 10 years has been unbelievable. And I'm hoping for a 49ers Super Bowl this year. So keeping our fingers crossed.
Nicely done. All right, and then obviously Steph's historic win a couple of years ago would have been a big moment. Cements
Yeah.
him in the top 10 of all time and such. Yeah, always fun to watch. Been a good season already so far. TC, it's been a
Mhm.
pleasure having you on the show. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best place to do that?
Yeah, through our website, we have a form on there, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. All of them are either Cartan Capital or Cartan Dash Capital. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
And Cici Bellis on LinkedIn, CICIBLLIS. And I mentioned earlier in the episode, Cartan, CARTA, and hyphen capital.com. Those are the details. They will all be in the show notes as well. Thanks so much for taking the time, Cici.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it.
All right, that's it for another episode of our investor series. We have a few more to go for the rest of the year. I think we're going to do two. I've got two investors more, and maybe a third as well before we do our end of year review and sign off for Christmas. And hopefully, I'll get tickets to that Man United game. If you have a hookup, please let me know. Otherwise, see you next week. Ciao.